There comes a moment in every life when the world breaks. Not with noise, but with silence. Not with fire, but with stillness. It is the moment you realize that nothing you've chased has ever belonged to you. Not the praise, not the power, not even the self you've spent a lifetime defending. It is the quiet collapse of illusions. And if you listen closely, you can hear it now. The breath between thought, the pause before desire, the trembling truth behind every mask. You know this feeling. You've carried this too. The warrior who grows tired of fighting. The monkey who touches the sky and still feels empty. Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, trickster, rebel, slayer of demons, master of the 72 transformations, born from stone, crowned in defiance, imprisoned beneath the mountain of his own pride. You've heard his tales, but this is not a story of his strength. It is the story of his surrender, because hidden beneath the thunder of his victories, behind the storm of magic and rebellion, lies a truth so quiet it nearly disappears. That true power was never in his staff, it was in the letting go. When Sun Wukong first burst from the stone, he was pure potential, consciousness awakened, unshaped by fear. But quickly the world taught him to cling, to name, to fight, to conquer. He mastered the elements, mocked the heavens, stole immortality itself. But with every transformation he became more lost. Because transformation without stillness is just another mask. And even a god is still bound, if he has not seen through his own illusion. Wukong thought freedom was flight, so he soared across the skies. He thought it was strength, so he challenged heaven itself. He thought it was immortality, so he swallowed every secret he could find. But desire, dressed in the robes of power, is still desire. And so the Buddha did not destroy him. He simply showed him the truth. With a raised palm, the Tathagata held up the illusion of control. He offered Wukong the entire sky. "Leap beyond my hand," he said, "and you will be free." And Wukong, fierce, proud, drunk on his own myth, took the challenge. He leapt, faster than lightning, beyond time, through stars and galaxies, thundering to what he thought was the end of all things. But when he arrived, when he planted his flag upon the farthest pillar of existence, the Buddha smiled and turned his hand. And Wukong was still there, within the palm, within the grasp of his own mind, because the sky he soared was still samsara. A dream, a projection, another form of the self. You can leap 1,000 lifetimes and still not leave the prison of craving. So the Buddha did not strike him. He offered him something far more merciful, a mountain. 5 fingers of silence, earth, water, fire, wind. He pinned the Monkey King beneath the weight of being. And there, in that darkness, something strange began to happen. Not quickly, not with drama, but slowly, like morning light across a forgotten land. The rage began to soften. The pride began to peel. The noise within him grew quiet, because the mountain was not a punishment. It was a mirror. Every stone whispered the same thing. You are not what you fight. You are what watches. Centuries passed, and in that stillness, something cracked. Not in pain, but in tenderness. Wukong began to see. He saw the cycles of his mind, craving, clinging, fearing, fighting. He saw the futility of conquering what was never separate to begin with. He saw that the gods he once envied were just prisoners in golden cages. He saw that to be invincible is not to be free, because invincibility defends, and freedom surrenders. The ego dies screaming, but it dies, and in its place, something else is born. Not a new identity, but awareness itself. When Xuanzang came, a humble monk seeking scriptures, it was not just a mission, it was an invitation to walk the path. to serve instead of conquer, to protect instead of destroy. At first, Wukong resisted. Of course he did. Old habits cling like shadows. He mocked. He boasted. He threatened. But deep within, something had already shifted. He bowed, not to Xuanzang, but to the path. And that was the beginning of his final lesson. As they journeyed westward, the trials came. Demons, doubt, betrayal, hunger. But each trial was never about the outer world. It was about seeing through it. When demons appeared, they were not monsters. They were cravings. When illusions danced, they were not magic. They were fear. When companions failed, it was not betrayal. It was karma unfolding. Each step, each suffering, was a mirror. And Wukong, once the master of chaos, became the guardian of the still point. He no longer sought transformation. He became transformation. One day, they crossed a river of fire. The others panicked. But Wukong stood still, because by now he had learned, you cannot extinguish fire by more fire. You meet it with calm. He stepped through the flame untouched, not because he fought it, but because he had become like space, vast, empty, untouched by grasping. That is the hidden power, not domination, but dissolution. He carried the monk. He carried the weight, but he no longer carried the self, and that was his freedom. Because liberation is not the end of the road. It is the road without destination. Not a crown, not applause, not even heaven, but the quiet joy of being no one, of acting without ego, of walking without leaving footprints, of loving without needing to be loved. Wukong, the rebel, the warrior, the king, was gone, and in his place stood something timeless. Awareness, walking in the shape of a monkey. Compassion, wearing the face of a trickster. The journey was never about reaching the west. It was about vanishing into the present. The path had no banners, no crowds waiting with praise, no thrones of gold or titles carved into time. And yet it was sacred, because the most sacred path is the one walked without witnesses, the one where no one sees your silence, where no one praises your restraint, where the only one you must conquer is the one whispering inside. You know this path. It's the one you take when you finally grow tired of becoming. When the masks fall away, not in drama, but in exhaustion. When you stop asking, who am I? And start wondering, what remains when I no longer need to be anyone? Wukong came to this edge. And there, without ceremony, he crossed it. There was no final battle, no roaring dragon, no last spell, only a quiet breath and the absence of resistance. His lesson was not shouted. It was a whisper. You are already free the moment you stop running. He could have fled again, could have leapt beyond clouds and stars, but he stayed. He served. He held the silence, and this is the fiercest transformation of all. In a world obsessed with ascent, Wukong chose to kneel, not in submission but in surrender, not to another's will, but to the wisdom that arises when the self dissolves. This is the great paradox. The warrior becomes peaceful, the trickster becomes still, the monkey becomes empty, and in that emptiness, something miraculous happens. He becomes whole. It was never about the staff, never about the immortality, never about proving himself to gods who had long forgotten their own nature. It was about becoming nobody, not in defeat, but in radiance, because the most dangerous prison is the one built of identity. And the greatest escape is not through force, but through seeing. Seeing that the bars were always made of thought, and the key was always stillness. Wukong learned to act without attachment, to serve without pride, to fight without hate, to love without clinging. He learned to be in the world but not of it. He learned the power of the middle way, not indulgence, not denial, but the quiet flame that neither burns too bright nor dims to ash. A steady light, even in the darkest forest. He could still roar, but his roar came from clarity, not rage. He could still strike, but his staff no longer served the ego. It served compassion, because enlightenment is not becoming less human. It's becoming fully present. It's washing a bowl as if it were the whole cosmos. It's protecting your companions not because they are useful, but because their suffering is yours. It's knowing that even the smallest act, done with mindfulness, bends the fabric of karma. Wukong became free not by escaping the world, but by embracing it, without clinging. And isn't that the hidden teaching? That the final lesson is not a mountaintop revelation, but the ability to carry water with reverence, to listen fully, to walk slowly, to notice the wind on your skin and the pain in another's eyes, and let both pass through you like clouds across the moon. That is the liberation few speak of, because it is not glamorous. It does not glitter. It cannot be bought, but it is the only thing that endures. Wukong, once the loudest being in the heavens, became the quiet guardian. His power remained fierce, divine, immeasurable, but it bowed now to wisdom. It bowed to stillness. It bowed to love. And you too carry this potential. Not because you were born of stone, but because you were born of awareness. You've simply forgotten. Forgotten. In the noise. In the chase. In the war to be seen, to be right, to be more. But the silence still waits for you. The mountain is not your enemy. It is your mirror. And when you finally stop resisting, it will teach you, as it taught him. You are not the chaos. You are the space around it. You are not the craving. You are the one who watches the craving rise and fall like waves. You are not your name, not your past, not even your thoughts. You are the breath that continues, even when everything else fades. This is not philosophy. It is not poetry. It is truth, waiting for you in the spaces between all the things you think you are. In the end, Wukong reached the west. The scriptures were obtained. The path fulfilled. But no one celebrated him. No parades. No celestial fireworks. Just a moment, so still it could have been missed. He looked out over the vastness, and in that silence, smiled. Not because he had arrived, but because he no longer needed to. He was already home. Not in place. In presence. Not in achievement. In awakening. What does it mean to arrive when there is nowhere left to go? What does it mean to awaken when nothing was ever asleep, only dreaming? Sun Wukong's final lesson was not that he conquered the world, but that he no longer needed to. Because the greatest conquest is not over demons or deities, but over delusion. The delusion that we are separate, that we must become something, that there is a destination beyond this moment. Every battle he fought was against his own reflection. Every demon he struck down was a shadow of his own mind. And when the last shadow vanished, not in violence but in light, he realized the journey had never been outward. There are no fireworks at enlightenment, no applause at awakening. Just a quiet breath, where the wind feels softer and the self feels lighter. Just the sound of one footfall after another, no longer chasing, no longer fleeing, just awareness, unburdened. This is the secret most never discover, that you can walk through the world untouched. Not because the world changes, but because you do. You no longer cling to praise. You no longer recoil from blame. You meet the moment like an old friend, unexpected, tender, complete. And in that meeting karma unravels, not erased but transformed. Because karma is not punishment. It is memory, sacred and precise. It gives you what you need to remember what you are. Sun Wukong remembered, not as a scholar or monk or god, but as presence itself. He saw the cause of suffering, not in the world but in the grasping mind. He saw that clinging to the self is like clinging to fire. It burns even as it promises warmth. He saw that desire paints paradise in the sky, but chains the soul to illusion. And so he let go, not one, but every moment. He let go of being special. He let go of being right. He let go of being seen. And in that letting go, something extraordinary happened. He remained. Not the monkey, not the king, not the name, but the silence beneath the name. The awareness beneath the form. The stillness that neither clings nor turns away, but simply is. This is the Dharma. Not a belief, not a ritual, but a direct seeing. Seeing that even in the chaos there is clarity. That even in pain there is presence. That even in loss there is space, vast and unmoving. Wukong's story is not a myth. It is a map, a mirror, a meditation in motion. He is the voice in you that once raged against injustice, and the voice that now whispers peace. He is the energy that sought to conquer the heavens, and the wisdom that now kneels before a sunrise. He is every seeker who has asked, "What is beyond this?" and every sage who has answered, "Nothing and everything." Because the answer is not in the sky, it is in the breath. Right now, this one. The inhale that holds no past. The exhale that fears no future. The moment between both, where truth lives. Imagine this. You wake one morning and you no longer feel the need to be someone. You simply are. You smile without reason. You walk without destination. You see someone suffering, and you don't try to fix them. You feel them. You hold their pain as your own, without flinching, without armor. Because compassion is not a strategy. It is what remains when the self dissolves. It flows from the same source as silence, from the same stillness where Wukong found his final lesson. And now you are here, not by accident, not by fate, but because something in you is ready. Ready to stop chasing clouds, ready to sit beneath your own Bodhi tree, ready to face the mountain. Not as punishment, but as path. It will not be easy. Your mind will scream. The ego will bargain, rage, weep. But if you sit, if you breathe, if you do nothing but remain awake to this moment, you will hear it. The same whisper Wukong heard beneath the mountain. There is nothing to become. There is only to remember. So stop. Not forever. Just now. Stop becoming. Stop fixing, stop reaching, and listen to the sound of your breath, to the flicker of awareness behind your eyes, to the space that needs nothing, yet allows everything. That is where Wukong ended, and where you begin. Here is no temple holier than this moment, no scripture truer than stillness, no teacher greater than suffering when met without resistance. And this is the essence of Wukong's final journey. Not a descent into humility, but a return to reality, the shedding of 1,000 disguises until only presence remained. Because when all masks fall, when even the sacred becomes silent, what's left is not emptiness. It's awareness, luminous, boundless, untouched by fear. You don't need to believe this. You only need to look. Look without the eyes of longing. Listen without the ears of opinion. What do you find? Not answers, but space. Not control, but surrender. And in that surrender, freedom. Wukong once thought awakening was an arrival, a throne, a reward earned by force or cleverness. But the awakened ones don't arrive. They disappear, not into oblivion, but into the moment. Like dew returning to the sea. Like fire returning to the sun. They become so empty of self. They touch everything. They no longer act from identity. They respond from truth. And truth is not fixed. It breathes, it bends, it flows through the fingers of those who have stopped grasping. So much of the world is noise, ambition, image, urgency, but none of it touches the core of what you are. The self you built, name, status, story, is a raft, useful for a time. But there comes a point when you must step off and walk the water. And walking the water is terrifying because you are not in control. But here is Wukong's final gift.
You never were.
And yet, you were never in danger. Let that in. Breathe it. You were never in control. But you were always held by the present, by awareness, by the stillness that lives beneath every thought, every fear, every flame. That is where Wukong woke up, not in the clouds, but in the silence between heartbeats. And when he woke, he didn't become divine. He became nobody, free to serve, free to laugh, free to act without the weight of self. True power does not come from force. It comes from emptiness, not the emptiness of despair, but the emptiness of space, holding all things, grasping none. This is why Wukong's staff grew or shrank with his mind. It reflected his inner state. When he clung, it was heavy. When he surrendered, it danced. He carried it not as a weapon but as a mirror. And when the mirror became still, the world followed. Because the world is not what it appears, it is what you bring to it. A restless mind creates a restless path, but a silent mind walks in peace. Even now, you are walking through joy, through pain, through memory, but deeper still, through illusion. And every now and then a crack appears, a moment where the veil lifts. A child laughs without reason. A breeze brushes your skin, and you feel infinite. You look at a dying leaf, and it's beautiful, not because it resists, but because it lets go. This is the Dharma, always waiting, never imposing. The same Dharma that broke through Wukong's rage, not with violence, but with love disguised as silence. We all carry a mountain of fear, of ego, of grief unspoken. But what if the mountain isn't blocking the path? What if the mountain is the path? What if, like Wukong, you've been buried not to be punished but to be softened, to stop the chase, to feel the weight of your mind and then to release it, slowly, tenderly, until even the burden becomes a blessing, and you rise, not as a conqueror, but as space itself. There is no greater revolution than peace, no deeper magic than presence, no stronger warrior than one who needs no war. This was the Monkey King's final act, not destruction, not escape, but stillness, and in that stillness, the world turned. But he finally did not. It ends not with triumph, but with stillness, not with a roar, but a breath. Sun Wukong, once the loudest echo in the heavens, became the quietest presence on earth, not erased, not diminished, but fulfilled, like a wave that returns to the ocean and forgets it was ever separate. He did not become enlightened. He remembered he already was, and now, so can you. Not by climbing, not by fighting, not by adding more to who you are, but by subtracting everything you are not. All the stories, all the scars, all the striving. You don't need to defeat your demons. You only need to stop believing they are you. You don't need to reach the West. You only need to sit where you are. And there is nothing missing from you. There never was. Your peace was never taken, only buried. Your wisdom never lost, only forgotten. You were never broken, only busy pretending to be whole. And so the final teaching is not a command. It is a gift, a whisper you've heard your whole life, beneath every question, every fear, every longing. Come home, not to a place, but to the quiet center of your being, to the breath that rises with no name, to the still point behind the eyes, to the sacred emptiness that holds all things, yet clings to none. Sun Wukong's final lesson wasn't about power. It was about presence. Not about taming the world, but about letting the world pass through. He did not become a god. He became real. No longer the stone monkey. No longer the rebel. No longer the myth. Just this breath, this moment, this seeing. And so now the journey is yours. No golden staff, no celestial names, just this one precious life. Walk gently, figured truth. Sit often, and when the winds of the world roar and the illusions return to tempt you, remember the mountain, remember the silence, remember the monkey who became the mirror, and smile, because now you remember too.